Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome to Tag Tuesday. This week's tag is the Edge of Reading tag. It was created by a new creator to me whose I believe name is Grix and his channel name is Grix, etc. I'll leave a link to it down below. I was tagged by Olly from the channel Criminale, which no doubt most of you know. I'll leave a link to his channel and to his video down below as well. This tag I thought was really interesting because it asked questions about things that I'm interested in, and that kind of has to do with the nature of reading, what reading is, and how reading works for me as an individual. So I'm going to be reading the prompts off my phone, and then I made myself some notes. So prompt one, and I'll leave the prompts down below so you can see all these. Prompt one is give me your definition of reading or use mine. So my definition of reading is this. Reading is one way for minds to connect, to share information, emotions, knowledge across time, space, culture, language. That it's a way for our minds to connect to other minds, to in effect see what other people have seen, to experience what other people have experienced. And in my reading, which is mostly in fiction and nonfiction, that's the kind of reading I do, and that's how I think of reading. Now, Grix's definition is a really good one, I thought. He said, reading is the act of interpretation of symbols that systematically put together in a certain sequence allow the reader to extract meaning from them in an active form of creation that can develop into complex narratives. That's a great definition, but I'm not sure I'm smart enough to understand that one, so I went with mine, that it's really is this way for minds to connect, to share all these things across time, distance, etc. So question two is, given your chosen definition, are reading and interpretation the same thing? If not, in what way do they differ? And I'm going to say that reading and interpretation are the same thing in the sense that reading involves interpretation. I can't think of any way around this. Each of us as a reader brings our own experiences, our own ideas, our own knowledge, our own emotions to whatever we read. And what we read, even though I do believe reading is this kind of connection between minds, what we read is filtered through that kind of lens, that filter of our own experience, and therefore we interpret it in ways that are personal to us, which, I think is why there's no agreement about, the greatest book or even necessarily what makes a good book. It's because of this personal kind of filter, this personal way in which we interpret texts that we read that are unique to us, which again, I think is just one of the great aspects of reading. Prompt three, are there any practices that you consider reading but that would fit that or other definitions of reading? So I'm not exactly sure about this question, but I would say that one thing that I think fits my definition of reading is interpreting people's facial expressions, interpreting their body language. Like when you're in a conversation with somebody, maybe you don't know them very well, or maybe you do. Even though I think it works better when you don't know them very well. When you are really kind of attuned to what they're saying, the expressions they make, when you respond, their body language, that in a sense you are reading all those symbols, you are reading all those things, you are connecting in a nonverbal way with that person, and you are constantly interpreting what their face, their body language is saying based on your own experiences. So to me, it kind of fits with that definition of reading. See, prompt four, is there such a thing as an ideal, is there an ideal reading experience for you? What is it? Is there a book that represents it? So an ideal reading experience for me is a novel. I believe that Olly gave the same answer. And what I like best right now, and this changes and has changed over the course of my life, but what I like best is a novel that's written in clean, clear prose that conveys a sense of place, a sense of person, character, emotions, and it conveys those things clearly without explaining everything, so that I, as the reader, as I've been indicating all this time, am kind of interpreting the language. I'm kind of drawing from maybe not a whole lot of description, all these things that I need to know, all these kind of deeper understandings. I don't want to be told everything, in kind of the classic old idea about writing is to show and don't tell. I prefer to be shown and not told, but I don't need to be shown in like obvious ways. I like to kind of be able to winkle all that out myself and to bring my own ideas to it, which again make that reading experience more personal to me. My most recent reading experience I think would fit that would be either Foster by Claire Keegan, which is just brilliant in this kind of writing, but also I'd say Boulder by her last name is Baltazar, and now I've forgotten her first name, which I think are both examples of nice, clean, clear prose which conveys deep meaning without going into a whole lot of explanation. So prompt 5 says, if there is such a thing as an ideal reading experience, it follows that there is a scale of value to reading. What is the bottom? So I would say what's the bottom for me is any kind of instruction manual. This is probably, the kind of reading that most people dislike the most. Instructions on how to do something, how to put something together, how to fix something. So the follow-up prompt to that is there a book on that bottom that you have loved or enjoyed as much as those on the top? And the answer to that is yes. Back several decades ago, when my wife and I bought our first car and we didn't have a whole lot of money, one of the things that I tried to do was to fix that car as often as I could myself. And I bought one of those books that they sell in auto parts stores, which is specific to the make and model of your car, which basically gives you an idea of how it all fits together and what problems might be and how to troubleshoot those problems. And that book was boring as heck. It wasn't something you would ever pick up and read. It is the worst in some ways kind of instruction manual, but it did help me fix my car on 2 or 3 different occasions. And so that meant a lot to me because it saved me money, but it's also really rewarding to be able to take something from written instructions and from a written description and actually put that into practice and to do something with that information. So this is prompt 6. Is reading, as the art of associating symbols and creating meaning out of them, a predecessor of language, or does it come after as a consequence of those languages? So I'm going to say the language comes first. That there was a word for everything before there was there were words for things before there was writing, before there were symbols conveyed. We think of this in terms of cave painting, which Olly brought up. I think is a great example. The people who created the cave paintings of, I don't know, bison or deer or whatever it was, I believe, had a word for that animal, had a word for the thing that they're depicting. And therefore, the word came before the language. To me, if I understand the question correctly, that would be my answer. Let's see, prompt 7. Is everything that can be read with meaning a language? And I'm just going to go with yes. I think everything can be read with meaning, whether it's a face, as Olly brought up, map, whether it's Braille, whether it is a computer language, whether it is, a binary language. It can be read, it can be understood, and meaning can be drawn from it. Continuing on, mention a few languages that defy conventional conception of what a language is, and could a book be written in any of those? So I'm going to stick with my example of facial expressions. And I do think facial expressions, are a language that defy our conventional conception of language. Could a book be written in any of those languages? I'm not sure a book could be effectively written in just facial expressions. I think you'd have to see the facial expression in the context of a place or other people or an event happening. You probably could write one, that's really short. Brian was asleep, I would make a sleepy face. Brian woke up, I make a waking face, and you could kind of have a short, almost kind of like a children's picture book based on that. So I guess it would count, but I don't think you could do something incredibly complex with just facial expressions, even though, as I said earlier, I do think that kind of counts as a language. And the last prompt, if you could boundlessly read, understand the meaning in one of those languages, which would it be? I didn't mention this, but Olly and I believe Grix mentioned this, that music would be a language. If I could read music, that would be great. I would love to be able to read music and turn that into actually creating music, which, whenever I sing or whenever I try to figure out something on the guitar, I just do it by ear because I can't read music and I don't know scales and things like that. So that would be great. I would really like to be able to read music. I think that answers that prompt. Anyway, there is my version of the Edge of Reading prompt. I'm going to go ahead and tag 2 people. I'm going to tag Mark Nash, because this seems like the kind of thing Mark Nash would be interested in. And I'm going to tag Jen from Remembered Reads, because she is quite possibly the smartest person I know on BookTube. And I would really enjoy seeing her answers as well. So there you go. There is the Edge of Reading tag. Great tag. Thanks to Grix for creating it. Thanks to Olly for tagging me. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.